This is a bill I think is of huge importance because Missouri is in our local governments are in a fix, and also our small businesses are in a fix. And I want everybody to fully grasp that, because when the overtime law, when we sat here about this time last year, there was broad consensus over the fact that nobody intended to mess with our overtime laws with the minimum wage law. And they also, I think it's fair to say, that there was not an expectation that the tipped employees would be dealt with in that legislation either. But that we ought to bring our state up, bring the minimum wage up to a more living wage. Several things that the unintended consequences, of course, are that the overtime laws, those were interpreted, as were the tipped employees law, to create conflicts for business and local government, not in the case of tipped employees with governments, but the overtime law for government. So what we ended up with, that I was afraid might happen, was a segregation where we would try a bill to fix the law for police and firefighters, not fix it for all government, and then completely leave in the cold that third category of private employers. We have, with the most recent court decision, the government employees are determined to not be employees, and they are now exempt from it, but we've left business out in the cold. I can't imagine the court logic that said a government employee is not an employee, but that's effectively what happened. So the interest in local government still exists, because I'm not certain there's total clarity that it's retroactive. So we need to clarify that. And we also need, if it hangs on one court decision now, it could conceivably be reversed later. What all my bill does, I don't get rid of indexing for inflation, I don't leave intact indexing for inflation, but I tie it to the federal minimum wage, which has really been the concern of everyone all along, that we don't put Missouri at a competitive disadvantage. The reality is we're going to be in line with the feds by 2009 or 2010 anyway. So this bill says that once we're in line with the feds, we will stay in line with the feds. We will continue to index for inflation, but we'll stay in line with the feds.
Half of the employees around the country start in our industry. It serves as a training ground and an entry-level ground for today's youth, as well as many of the people that start out with their jobs. In a 2006 economic development survey that I completed for my restaurants, my servers ranged in pay anywhere from $9 to $35 an hour. With the decision to make the minimum wage legislation that passed reflect an increase in the server wage, that was over $1 raise for each one of those employees. That forced me to freeze any increases for my back-of-the-house staff that Senator Loudon mentioned for over 6 months. And many of those ranged anywhere from $750 to $850. In fact, I only had 3 employees that were over that, and so they were already at a disadvantage compared to my service staff. I evaluated my numbers between 2006 and 2007, and our percentage of payroll as it reflected to revenue increased 2%. Yet I cut 978 hours of employee hours out of payroll from 2007 over 2006 in order to maintain just a 2% increase in that. And so I think if you look at businesses larger than mine, many of them will probably tell you the same story, and that substantially impacts the number of employee hours that are available out there in our industry, and I would think tax revenue as a result of that to the state.
And we would like to go on record in support of this legislation as well. I think the goal and the intent of the voting electorate is being solved by the changes in the federal law and what Senator Loudon has compromised here in such a way that the minimum wage has increased. There are better wages. Now the issue is, do we continue to escalate that on that urban index CPI inflator each year, and what does that potentially do to jobs in the future? We've seen this happen in the state of Washington. Washington enacted the same language that we did only they did it about 4 years ago. And you've seen some things increase, such as in the food service industry, the average cost for a burger and fries and a Coke not at a fast food restaurant, but at a sit-down type restaurant, was in the $7 area. That same meal is now in the $13 frame. And as you heard from some of the other testimony, then that causes the increased costs, then go back to the servers and increase tips, and so you begin to create this cyclical system. I think Senator Loudon's language that he's come up with gets us on track with the federal and keeps us on track with other states and protects our jobs and has higher wages for our workers in the future.
Any questions?